So we're coming up to the end of 2019, which means we're getting probably a couple months away from an official reveal for the PlayStation 5, the Xbox Scarlet. I'm not really sure which one will be shown first. It could honestly, they could be a week apart once they hear about when each other's going to do it. I could see Sony going first though, just because we've already learned quite a bit of information from them, and then it kind of seemed like Microsoft responded a bit to them at E3 with kind of their trailer and overview of what sounded like pretty much the same stuff, right? We know that there's going to be a solid state drive of some kind, or just solid state memory that we use for our storage, which keeps being touted as like the big thing, right? That we should look forward to, that could be an actual generational leap, which, yeah, probably. I mean, going from a slow 5,400 RPM mechanical drive to what they say is a solid state drive that is faster than what we even know in current PCs right now, which is probably because they'll design the entire system around it to leverage it, whereas when you build a PC, you're of course putting parts together that then are designed to work together through Windows. And looking at kind of the timetable, I'm not surprised to hear necessarily that we could see multiple systems or multiple SKUs from the PlayStation 5. And this is going to be an interesting situation, I think, when these systems come out and when they get revealed, that being the Scarlet and the PlayStation 5. But we do have a new rumor that is starting to make the rounds, and it's actually fairly credible based on their history, where this person also talked about the Switch Lite way back when as a handheld only Switch, which to a lot of people sounded crazy, right? Because that defeats the whole purpose of the Switch. Well, I'm going tomorrow to pick one up. It is a thing, so hey, you never know. But let's take a look at this rumor for the PlayStation 5, talk a little bit about it, and see what the possibilities are here. Make sure you guys like the video if you enjoyed it on the way out, and subscribe, because we're going to have some more fun talking about different gaming news and topics and rumors going forward, especially since it seems like the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Scarlet rumor mill is just getting started. Now, this rumor comes courtesy from WCCF Tech, who did a lot of legwork and put a lot of it together, titled the PlayStation 5 Pro to release together with base models. So we'll get two, similar to what we have now, the PlayStation 4 and the PlayStation 4 Pro. However, keep in mind, those were staggered releases. We had the PS4 Pro years after the base PS4 released, but if we go down here, we can kind of go over the source of where this rumor is coming from and why it's making the rounds right now, because it is a fairly credible source. Like I said, the person who talked about the Switch Lite before that was a thing. And this is according to Japanese journalist Zenji Nishikawa, who says Sony is launching two different PlayStation 5 models next year. We already figure holiday 2020 seems to be the most likely time for them to release it. That would be 7 years after the PlayStation 4 released, and that's a pretty good console cycle now. Remember, the 360 and the PS3 was an oddly long console cycle. I mean, the Xbox original was like a 4-year cycle. Keep that in mind. So now we're at the point where we're getting 7-year cycles, and honestly, that's just a lot of visuals are looking very much the same now, and I don't think the generational leap to the PlayStation 5 is going to be all visual. Like, I don't think graphics are going to look like crazy or anything compared to what we have now. They'll look sharper, sure, higher resolution, higher detail and everything, better physics, hopefully better AI, we assume. But it's not going to be like going from like the N64 to the GameCube, just as an example. That was a fairly large leap. You can see the difference there if you put them side by side, obviously. Now, according to the journalist, Sony has acknowledged the interest in a high-end model and wants to give players what they want right from the beginning of the generation. There's the stream where they talk about that, the journalist, and they had actually attended a conference where different developers and journalists came together, and that seemed to be making the rounds, that they wouldn't be just creating for one system, not just a base model like a PlayStation 4. It would be like, oh, right out of the gate, we're going to be developing for the PlayStation 4 and the PlayStation 4 Pro. Consider that back in 2013 compared to now, where we'd get a PS5 and a PS5 Pro on launch, not halfway through the generation. And that's going to be interesting to see how that would potentially work out, because it would, I'm curious if that would confuse the consumer at all. Okay, so I think at this point, we have so many phones and iPads and stuff, and we've heard from Microsoft, just as an example, even Nintendo to a degree, but I know Microsoft talked about breaking down the idea of generations and maybe having systems come out every couple of years, right? Because we've already done that with our phones, and phones do cost quite a bit more than consoles. Now, here's the thing. Phones in this day and age are nearly a necessity, right? Most people pretty much look at that and say, well, I need a phone. I don't necessarily need a game console for my living room, right? I can get by watching Netflix or even playing games on your phone, technically. I mean, there's a large market for that, and those games make quite a bit of money. So let's think about this, and I'll leave the link to this this article down below if you'd like to read a little bit more about this and everything. So what would be the difference between a PlayStation 5 and a PlayStation 5 Pro? Well, if we look back at the last time that Sony did something like this, when they took the PS3 as an example, remember that came out as a 60 gigabyte model and it came out as a 20 gigabyte model. And the differences were the hard drive size, which seems obvious to say that, right? 60 to 20. And the idea of Wi-Fi. It also did not have the 20 gigabyte model, so it was LAN only. There was no, so you had to plug it in. There was no Wi-Fi. And it was also missing all of the little features on the front, which included spots for memory cards, like the one from the PSP, for example. They had that, and a few others as well. And I think the 20 gigabyte, if I'm remembering correctly, had 2 USB ports, but it may have also had 4 off the top of my head. I do know it was missing Wi-Fi, and it was missing 40 gigabytes because it was 20 versus 60, and it was missing all of the extra slots on the front underneath of that flap that would open up, but it was still fully backwards compatible. So if we look at that, okay, and we say, what if Sony followed that similar idea? Well, the difference then would just be hard drive size with maybe a few other little features, but I think the biggest thing here could possibly be the hard drive itself, right? Like the solid state is going to be expensive the bigger it gets. So they could release one as a 500 gigabyte model and the other one as a terabyte, or 1 terabyte and 2 terabyte. But then you also get in the idea of, what if they just made it more powerful? What if they did release something? Let's just pretend for a second. I've seen the latest rumors and ideas being somewhere roughly around 12 to 13 teraflops. What if they made one that was like 9 teraflops with a 500 gigabyte solid state drive or a 1 terabyte solid state drive, and that came out at like $400, and then they had the other one at $500? Or what if it was a 500 and a 600? I question if Sony would use this to, rather than tackle the high end, have a low end option and then a basic model. Like the PS5 would have come out at like a 13 teraflop thing with a 1 terabyte drive attached to it. But what if they could get a $400 model and lower things down a bit so they can get that pricing in there? Because something that I have told you guys, we've seen it in the sales charts, it's very interesting to look at. The thing that usually sells isn't the most powerful system, it's the cheapest, most affordable system. That's why the Switch Lite has been viewed so heavily now, and people have been trying to do predictions around how much it could benefit Nintendo to have it, because it's $200, not because it's missing all the features and everything. That doesn't seem to matter as much to the general public when it comes to getting your hands on a system. The PS4 base always seems to outsell the PS4 Pro, and that's because it's $100 to $150 cheaper, and the Xbox One X versus the S is very similar. The Xbox One S always outsells the X, and that's because one is like $200 now easy on Amazon, whereas the other is between $400 and $500. But I question the confusion around consumers and if it'll be easy for store associates to be able to explain what the difference is between these systems, because that can already be pretty difficult at Walmart, for example, or even Best Buy. Now throw a PS5 and a PS5 Pro, give them a spec sheet of 8K versus 4K and teraflops and solid state drives and size differences there. It's going to be an interesting situation when a consumer walks in there, because I have a strong feeling they will gravitate towards the part that really matters to them, and that is the pricing. 400 versus 500, I'll take the $400 model. That's most likely what they'll say. But let me know what you guys think about this down below. I'm very curious. Thanks guys for watching. I'll see you next time.